This week on Head to Head, the new Rise of Skywalker trailer review.
You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars. Begins now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this podcast. So obviously, we've got the brand new final Star Wars trailer that's out now.
Yes, sir.
So, we've been talking about this on our show. We've been talking about it for a while, actually.
Mm-hmm.
We've been promoting on our Instagram, our Twitter, and everything else. But there were actually some leaked photos.
Yeah, when you sent those to me, I was just kind of like, wow. Like,
I know.
First of all, I'm just wondering, like, who did it? And, like, how did they get...
Yeah, and the name escapes me. I posted them on our Instagram, at head-to-head-SW on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Actually, I posted them to all the social media. And what's interesting is the two shots were really compelling. I remember I was actually watching the YouTube video, the gentleman that posted them.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he's got a lot of, inside connections, things like that he can, that he knows about or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting was he posted the photos, and Lucasfilm and a lot of people like Disney actually kind of went after him a little bit.
Oh,
he was even in Newsweek and all this stuff.
Well, yeah, man. I mean, it's like, my thing is, one, I get it, but it's like, one, you're kind of spoiling it for people. And then two, you kind of have to wonder, like, how's this stuff even getting out? Because
I don't find it to be too spoilery, though. I mean, if you really look at the photos,
mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't find them to be as spoilerish as I think some of the other stuff.
Well, maybe, but one of them it is to me. But, I think it's just, and a lot of people already kind of, guessed it anyway, but.
Yeah, and I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's kind of like... you kind of have to really look at things from a certain perspective or from a certain point of view. But yeah, I just feel like, one, you have somebody who we're all anxious to see this movie. And it's kind of like when people go see movies, first weekend, like Endgame, for example, and then everybody's like, oh, we know this happened to Iron Man dies or something like that. It's just like, give us a chance for Christ's sakes. And that's
I know.
the kind of thing.
Those guys that like, as soon as they get home from seeing the movie, they put like all this stuff on there.
And it's just kind of like, it ruins the experience for everybody else.
That's true, because not everybody can go out and see it.
All right. Some people have work, some people have kids. They can't, just run out and just do it. So at least wait to the spoilers until maybe like the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that. Spoilers, I think they should probably wait minimum 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
Before doing spoilers. But, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I think that the problem is that we're so, no pun intended, spoiled that, you just, I don't know. I think people just assume because we live in such a, really fast, rapid informational thing that, that is, that everybody already knows it anyway. So, and, a lot of times people aren't thinking when they post stuff to their own social media, they're just kind of like, well, I'm just going to, post this because not everybody's reading it.
Mm-hmm.
But,
but those who are, then they get to share it, and then they are sharing it with their friends, and then it's the trickle down effect. And
do you remember that guy that got beat up outside the movie theater after Force Awakens?
Yes, he was blabbing. That's what happens, man. That's what
right.
happens. But I guess it's time to pour it up a little bit.
Is it?
Yeah, man.
That time to go?
I'm a little thirsty.
Going to the Cantina.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go.
Well, here's my thing. I've been kind of wondering, like, with Luke being, a Force ghost and all, and we have Palpatine back. Like, I wonder if Palpatine is really going to be as strong as he was, like, in Return of the Jedi.
That's a good question.
I mean, because, like, the guy got sawed in half. Well, not sawed in half, but he actually just got launched. That was Darth Maul. He got launched over into the reactor. So it's kind of like, depending on what happened, like, you know, I don't know, because he took in a big burst of Force lightning himself.
Oh, yeah.
Which he's already been kind of used to, I guess, so since, you know, Revenge of the Sith. But I wonder if he's going to be at his zenith like he was in Return of the Jedi for the Rise of Skywalker.
That's a good question. I really don't know. Because there's, on one hand, you can make a couple of arguments on that. You could say that, you know, time has moved on and that, you know, he's just growing in power, almost kind of how Luke has.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you know,
kind of decrepit. I mean, it's like, because the thing about the dark side is that it ages you. And of course, it ultimately, like, kind of kills you just because you're so consumed by it. So it's been like, what, 30 years since the events of, Return of the Jedi?
Yeah, something like that.
So if he's been waiting all this time and he's, you know, been sulking on whatever godforsaken planet he's been hiding on, you know, you got to kind of wonder, like, is he really going to be the Palpatine that we know? And especially like from the trailer, which we'll get into, of course, later. But,
right,
you know, like him on this little thing right here, it's just kind of like, well, what's his condition like? You know, it's like, is he even in the position to really fight? Is he in the, you know, like what state physically can he really, because he was even kind of old and decrepit. He had a cane, you know, in Return of the Jedi. He was barely walking around doing that type of stuff. Now, I don't know if that was for show, kind of like how if he could drop it and like Yoda did and start flipping around and doing all kind of crazy stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems to me like, I think it depends on a lot of things. Number one,
mm-hmm.
You have to look at the fact that Palpatine obviously had this all planned out.
Right. I'm taking notes of you right here.
Yes, of course you are. So Palpatine had this all planned out, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems that if he could survive that fall in that reactor,
right,
then obviously, I don't think that was part of his plan, by the way.
To get launched into a reactor.
I don't think it's kind of like, okay, Vader's going to do this. No, but I think that he had a contingency plan. We know that from the Aftermath trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting about that now, in the context that we know that Palpatine is back, and even judging by this photo here, you know, we see now, what's interesting to me is that he's in some sort of metal contraption that's like helping him move, and he's like,
he looks like he's like 9, 12 feet tall.
Yeah,
or
he's
something.
like inching towards, you know, Rey in this. So, you know, I mean, he's obviously saved the best tech for himself so he can get around. It's almost like he's prepared for this.
Yeah. I mean, he's kind of has his own, you know, it seems like he has his own kind of Vaderish, because, you know, like I say, he had that suit, you know, made for Vader relatively quickly.
Right.
It's like, where did that come from?
Well, I mean, it was known that Palpatine actually had a bunch of tech and everything. Mm-hmm. You know, like he was always into that kind of thing.
Do you think he originally had the Vader suit for himself?
That's something that's been the source of much speculation over the years.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Well, actually, yeah. Like in case he got injured or something like that.
Or just his age, because you got to think about it. It's like, okay, he already has like this built-in respirator. He was like, I mean, granted, he wasn't terribly old, you know, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, but he was old enough. Like he probably looked like he was in his maybe late 60s, 70s.
No, yeah, I know. I would say you were absolutely right about that.
So if you're thinking about it, like, okay, so from that point, even until, let's just say, A New Hope, you know, like, okay, he would have aged another 20 years.
Well, but according to the folklore, though, or at least, you know, and I'm not sure if any of this is even canon anymore, mind you, but what was always the explanation in canon was the fact that he had that suit made for Vader, and he purposely made it to where it was painful. It was, you know, it was always injecting like pain into him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was partially for punishment for failing him. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I'm going to keep you alive, but I'm not going to give you like some super comfortable suit.
Right.
So, you know, but I mean, with this though, like I said, I think he obviously had some sort of a plan.
Okay.
That once he survived, it's like he kind of regrouped, and I think that Snoke played into that. There's a lot of different things.
Okay. Well,
so what do we got next?
So since we're talking about the trailer already, the fan reaction. So I watched it, you've watched it, and then of course we subsequently been combing YouTube and of course other things, and been reading a bunch of forums and everything like that as far as people's response to the trailer. What was your thoughts? Well, what do you think the fans are thinking? Not your thoughts just yet, but the fans' thoughts.
We're gonna get chill out. We're gonna get to our reaction of the trailer, but excuse me, what we're talking about right now is your reaction. And the reaction of everybody else.
Right.
And it's interesting because the reviews of or basically the news of the reactions are almost mixed too, because there's a lot of places, news outlets in particular, that are saying it's been overwhelmingly positive. Other ones are saying it's been mixed. I think it falls somewhere in there too. I think it's majority positive reviews. I think a lot of people like the trailer. They don't necessarily like the trailer for this particular film, which we'll also get into probably a little later. But at the same time, I think people are really excited about the movie, and I think that that's evidenced by the fact that it's breaking records again. In fact, I think it's only behind Endgame.
Actually beat Endgame.
Did it?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
I think it was either this week, like after. What's this?
So is it now holding the record for sales, pre-sales?
For pre-sales, yeah, I believe it's actually beat Endgame.
Well, there you go. I mean, to me, that's a pretty compelling, thing. Well, saying that fans are actually liking this. Or they think they're going to like this movie.
Well, yeah, and I mean, of course, you survived Last Jedi, so it's like, okay, you got to see how it ends at this point, so you got those mainstays, and then of course you have, all right, those who have seen the trailer, of course, you have those, especially, and I think what really kind of excavated like a lot of people's interest in it was the featurette. Because that featurette...
It's funny, that whole sizzle reel featurette thing, to me, is probably better than all the trailers we've seen, or the two we've seen.
Well, okay.
And don't forget, we are going to get an international trailer.
I was going to say that too, yep. We are going to get one of those, and we'll cover that whole trailer thing as far as which was the best one a little bit later. But I think what the fans are really feeling is kind of like, They're hopeful. They're very excited for what's to come, and it's had beautiful imagery. Oh, and I think that's just, and like I said, we'll get into it, but I think
this is a segment where we talk about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, because that's what I'm just trying to hold off until we can really get into it. But the fans' reactions, though, I mean, I watched a lot of fans' reactions to it, and some people were like, okay, cool. And then other people were just kind of like, And then, of course, there are other people who are just like, whoa, okay. With some of the shots and some of the things that we've seen. Well,
and that's it. It's eye candy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that a lot of people are responding depending on what their expectations are for the film. For some people, the visuals they're really taken with it. For other people, it's kind of like, okay, it looks cooler than The Last Jedi, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. I think a lot of people have been afraid after The Last Jedi to trust, to go in there and just be like, okay, maybe this one's going to be the one, and then they're afraid they're going to get disappointed.
Well, while we're talking about trailers, like, when you talk about a trailer, what is a trailer supposed to do?
Well, at its elemental core, it's supposed to get you to want to see the movie. Now, there's a lot of people who are, I guess, more film snobbish that will, go into a lot of heavy detail about that. And there's a certain point that I'll go to. Like, I think that a trailer should give you the basic narrative, the basic story. That's really what people respond to. People respond to character development. They respond to, even action movies. Like if you look at mindless action movies, they give you an idea what the story is about. It might be the most two-dimensional story, guy...
Like Gemini Man, for example.
Sure. Although I actually saw it and liked it. But, yeah, I mean, it's a fairly simple story.
Right.
But you knew that going into it. You knew what it was about. And then you made the decision. Whereas I want to be able to get an idea what the story is going to be.
Okay.
And that's what I generally think a trailer ultimately should do, because if you think about it, you're marketing a movie. So first of all, you got to know your fan base. You got to know to whom you're actually marketing the film.
Right.
But then you also have to take it a step further and get that target audience invested in seeing the movie. See, the problem with Star Wars is that people think that if you just put the Star Wars logo on there, people are going to see it. And there's a certain amount of truth to that.
That is true.
I mean, even The Last Jedi is considered,
the worst out of
the worst out of all of them. Because even Solo, which was, quote unquote, the box office flop,
right?
Which it still made, I don't know, like
gobs of money,
hundreds of millions of dollars, right? But the Last Jedi, which is, the most pan Star Wars film of all time, still made like $2 billion. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think for me, with a trailer, it should give me a sense of the story, or what I'm actually seeing. And then I think it just needs to invoke, it's got to tease me with something like that's going to really get me like, okay, I got to see this.
Yeah, exactly. Something that makes you just go, man, I've got to go see this movie.
All right. Now, however you do that, whether it's visuals, whether it's a line from the movie, like a piece of dialogue that's like, oh yeah, this is going to be good, or like even for example, when we saw the new Terminator trailer, and of course Sarah kind of says, "I'll be back." That was actually kind of like, all right. That was kind of cool. The fact that she's like, that Arnold's back, and it's
and then you talk about different trailers, right? Because like if you look at the Dark Fate trailer, well, there's been a few of them,
right?
Like the whole one with the whole "I'm going hunting" song or whatever, that really was not that great of a trailer to me. But the latest trailer,
the latest one is awesome.
I thought was really cool, and for that reason, it made me want to go see it, and it gave you a little bit more of what the story was about, rather than a bunch of edited together action sequences.
Right.
It's like, especially with Terminator, why should I care about this movie anymore? I mean, now I was one of those people. I liked Terminator 3, didn't love it, but I liked it.
Right.
I actually thought Salvation was really good. Genesis, I thought, was actually a cool idea. I mean, I guess in the whole Terminator universe, I can understand why a lot of people didn't like it, but I thought it was a cool spin on the whole thing. So by the time we get to Dark Fate, it's kind of like, okay, cool, James Cameron's back. You got, and a lot of the critics are saying this is the best one since Terminator 2. So I'm curious to see that. And, I just think that Star Wars is on a similar resurgence because, as we know, critics love The Mandalorian. They got to see like a half hour of it or something. And everybody is saying that this is a really fantastic series, and it's, like a month away from debuting now, pretty much.
Actually, less than that.
Well, yeah, less than that. 3 weeks?
Yeah.
So, I still think that Star Wars has a lot of life in it, but I don't think that it's a reason for that or any movie to get lazy on trailers. And I think a lot of films now are starting to do that a little bit. They're starting to just cut together a bunch of scenes and...
Yeah, it is... Or a certain actor or actress is going to be in this movie.
Right.
Or it is, you get no sense of the story. And then, of course, some people go see it and you're like, oh, like this is an awesome movie. And you're like, really? Because it didn't look awesome based on the trailer. And it's like, well, if everybody's ranting and raving about it, then it's like.
Or the opposite. Sometimes, you see this trailer and you think it's going to be this fantastic movie and you go see it and you're like, oh, man, all the best scenes were in the trailer.
Yeah, I was about to say, I hate when they do that. Like when they put all the cool stuff or all the funny lines and it's like, all right, the rest of the movie is just kind of dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
The trailer should have actually probably been the film.
Right.
But, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. What about you guys? What was your reaction to the trailer? I mean, of course, we're all about the Rise of Skywalker final trailer for this episode. We're pretty much talking about it in almost every segment, but, we'll see. Let us know at Head to SW or in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you can be notified when we're going to have videos coming up, because we're going to start to do more videos on this channel. Now that Head to Head has its own YouTube channel, we can actually do a lot more videos that are Star Wars related and maybe even some that, are not so related. We'll see. All right, what do we got next?
All right, so we talked about Endgame a little bit as far as ticket sales. Now, a lot of people are comparing, Star Wars to Marvel, especially because, one, they're under the same roof as the rest of the movie industry, basically, is Disney's helm. But, we finally actually got the runtime for Rise of Skywalker. Now, Endgame was about 3 hours and 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. Rise of Skywalker would be 2 hours and 35 minutes, which makes it the longest Star Wars movie to date. And it's not quite as long as, of course, Endgame. How do you feel about it? Do you think it's necessary or?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that it needed to be a longer movie because you're wrapping so many things up, and they're trying to tie the prequels into this. They're trying to do, they're actually trying to tie up the entire saga.
Right.
One of the things that everybody forgets about this film is it's not just tying up a trilogy.
Right. It's tying all 9 films.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at Revenge of the Sith, The Return of the Jedi, those movies actually had a lot they had to tie up as well, and they're just tying up a trilogy. Mm-hmm. This is, tying up the entire saga. And so consequently, I do think that it needs to be, whether it needs to be 3 hours long, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think that maybe it really needs to be quite that long, but
honestly, I would have wanted a little bit more, just because I feel like there's going to be some things that might need a little bit more oomph to it. So I would honestly probably try to put it at 2:45.
You know what's funny about that, though? It's like there's a documentary. Maybe we could put a link to it below. I don't know. It's called How Star Wars Was Saved in the Edit. And if you look at George Lucas's original edit of A New Hope, it was terrible. It was absolutely awful.
Wow.
And it was long. So what happened was, trying to remember her name, got a hold of it, and they actually cut it and did all this stuff, and it became what we knew today. There's something to be said for cutting a movie for pacing, just for story, I guess, content-wise, too. Sometimes it's not even just the pacing of the film. Sometimes it's just like you're cutting things out of it just simply because it's not needed. Yeah,
even for one of the things I've always said, with Return of the Jedi, how they have the deleted scene, of course, of Luke building his lightsaber in that cave. It would have been cool to see. I mean, I get why they didn't put it in there, because ultimately it doesn't move the story along. But at the same time, I guess for us it kind of does, just because you can kind of see that growth.
Well,
but you still
again,
saw it in other ways.
That's the fans, though. You're speaking as somebody who's become a huge fan. So it's once you become a huge fan, it's now I want to see
biased.
I want to see everything.
Right.
I mean, I want to. Luke. I want to see Luke getting dressed in the morning, or I want to. I mean, it's kind of you start to want to know everything about these characters. I want to see him build a lightsaber. But, I mean, for the average moviegoer, and just for the pacing of a film, it's you don't really need it. That said, though...
Because we said the same thing about the Canto Bite scene in
Yeah.
Last
but
Jedi.
see, the whole thing about the Canto Bite scene is I think that was just an unnecessary... Like, that was just an unnecessary story element. There are so many other things that... Well, first of all, if they wanted to send him on a mission like that, they could have handled it a lot differently.
Yeah.
Secondly, if they were going to do it that way, they could have cut it a lot differently.
Yeah, and that's my thing. Like, I think there's some things where it's just like it wasn't necessary for us to see all this. It's like, okay.
Well, I don't think the Canto Bite scene would have bothered people as much if there hadn't been other more compelling things. Like, you got Luke Skywalker struggling with his whole entire belief in the Force and, like, you know, the fact that it was cut off, and you got Rey and her journey, you got Kylo and his journey, you've got all these other things, and we're watching basically Rose give us some sort of a lecture on, you know, the evils of
government, basically.
Government, yeah. You know, it's kind of like, okay, that's great and all, but there's other things I would rather you focus on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's almost like, remember the series 24?
Mm-hmm.
We would always watch that, and it's like, oh, great, Kim Bauer running in the woods again for like 20 minutes. I don't need to see that. Get back to what Jack's doing.
Right.
And I think that that's the biggest problem that you face if you make the... I always say, make the movie as long as it needs to be. Not a minute more, not a minute less. Because, like, for instance, there are things that I think add to it. Let's go to the controversial special editions.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it wasn't quite handled right effects-wise, the whole infamous Jabba Han Solo scene, I thought added a lot more key information and made you really feel like, okay, there was a relationship there, you know, between Jabba and Han. Han was almost like a son to him in a way, or, you know, somebody special, and he felt betrayed, and that's why he got so angry. And it kind of puts a whole different spin on Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
You know, or even the Wampa scene in Empire Strikes Back. I thought that made the whole thing a little bit more urgent. Mm-hmm. You know, rather than just seeing Luke hanging upside down and you hear a roaring in the background and everything. But when you see the Wampa actually eating, and he's kind of a freaky creature, and then he hears Luke and he turns, and you know, it just added a little bit more dynamics, I thought, to the scene.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with you that the movie should be as long as it needs to be. But I'm just thinking, like, of all the things that you're trying to encompass, I just feel like...
Oh, yeah. Well,
you just
again,
probably might
it needs to be...
You know.
You just basically feel it needs to be longer.
Just a little bit. Like, I don't necessarily... I used to think it should be a 3-hour movie just because I'm thinking of everything. But, I mean, I think you could probably wrap it up in 2:45. Yeah.
Oh, I don't disagree. I mean, surely they can find 10 more minutes of compelling things to put in the film.
Well, yeah, it's just especially like a dialogue. Because to me, it's more so like I want to hear more.
But I'll tell you this, I'm glad it wasn't shorter.
Yeah, that's true.
Imagine it's like, hey, well, we managed, Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, it's 2:15, and then fans would be like, oh, I don't know, man.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, we'll just have to see. But what about you guys? What about the runtime? Do you guys think it's long enough? Do you think it's too long? Do you think it's too short? It's kind of Goldilocks here on Head to Head. Let us know in the comments, what you guys are thinking.
So let's wrap up the Cantina here.
Yeah, we're getting there.
So I'm going to finish my little drink here.
Finish your drink. Such a lush.
Hey. The road to recovery, as I say. Anyway. Next, we have Duel of the Fates.
Duel of the Fates.
All right, so this week, we were talking about trailers.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought up, actually, earlier that you thought that the Sizzle Reel's last featurette was actually better than most of the trailers. So my question to you is, out of all the sequel trailers, which one was the best?
Sequel trailers or entire saga?
Sequel. Just a sequel alone.
Oh, only the sequel.
Yes.
I'd have to say Force Awakens.
Okay.
Especially the teaser trailer.
The whole Chewie went home. That one?
No, that's the second one. Although that's a close second. The teaser trailer was the one where you just see like the desert, and then Finn's face pops up, and then you see the stormtroopers on the transport.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was only like 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I thought it was a really effective trailer because it gave you. See, the whole Force Awakens cycle, going back to our conversation, about what a trailer should do and everything, that whole trailer cycle to me was perfect. Or
near
perfect with Star Wars. I mean, I'm sure you can probably make a bunch of arguments, but because in the teaser trailer, you got a sense of what the world was like post Return of the Jedi, but they didn't give away too much. And you could see, okay, the Empire, because we didn't know it was called the First Order at that point, but you kind of like, okay, well, so the Empire's advanced a little bit, and maybe they've come back or whatever. You see that there's kind of a rebellion. You see that, there are things going on in the galaxy. There's conflict again. And then you go to the second trailer, which is the one you're talking about, the whole, Chewie, we're home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you see Han Solo, which, of course, that still gives me chills to this day whenever I see that trailer. Because, I mean, it just encapsulates, like, you never thought you would see Harrison Ford again, ever in that role.
Yeah.
And it also gave you a little bit, like, it opened up the story a little bit more. You could tell that it was about this girl who didn't really know her place in the universe, her own origins or anything like that, and, how she's meeting up with a lot of people, and, almost kind of had a Wizard of Oz vibe to me for that.
It's funny because, like,
the movie, actually.
Yeah, it's funny because the teaser, you would think that, well, the first teaser, you kind of under the impression that the story is about Finn, just because he's the first person you see.
Well, I would argue that in some cases the story is about Finn.
Well, I mean, but that's one of the things, too, that people kind of are trying to figure out, like, who's this story really about? Because you could make it about any one of the three main characters, Finn, Rey, or Kylo, because they all are trying
even Poe, for that matter.
Well, Poe is more like a secondary. I mean, he's still on the same mission, like all of them trying to find their way. But I think it's not so much focused on him. But like Finn has been focused on since day one. Rey has been focused on since day one, and so is Kylo. So I think those are your three main characters. You really kind of trying to figure out, like, okay, all of them have advanced by this movie. And now you're trying to figure out, okay, how is it going to end for all of them? Whereas Poe, it's kind of like you kind of know where he's going to ride anyway, because he's been on the consistent path the whole time. He's always been part of the rebellion, and he hasn't any changes of wavering that. It's just he's always just trying to do what's best for, the new rebellion. But with Finn, he's been trying to figure out what he's trying to do, going from a stormtrooper to now joining them. And then Rey is trying to figure out, okay, I have these powers, I don't know what to do with this. Kylo's battling the light versus the dark, and he's got
that was the thing. There were a lot of themes that were explored, and actually that's why even though I understand everybody's criticism about The Force Awakens being somewhat derivative, and of course it's kind of like you have to remember, it's like basic literature class people, it's poetry. There's certain beats.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, how many songs have you guys heard that have very similar or the same drum beat? There's only, 12 notes in music, so everybody's doing what they can with those chords. And the idea is that you try to make them sound different, and you try to, I guess, find your own voice within them. But look at blues music. Same thing. It's kind of the similar type of vibe, and that's kind of what Force Awakens was. But the other side of that is that it actually, I thought anyway, gave you a different spin on a lot of the things. True.
Like, one thing, since we're talking about the trailers, I will say, like, that the whole Chewie went home thing and then was awesome just because when you finally see Harrison Ford back in his Han Solo attire with Chewie on the Falcon again. It was just like, wow.
Man.
And then, of course,
incredible.
That whole line when he's like, it was true, all of it. Like, like him actually admitting about the Force, and just, everything he kind of felt because if you follow his journey, you know, how he was in A New Hope to like now, you're just like, yeah, he's completely changed his mind on stuff.
And that's what I thought was actually really cool about The Force Awakens too, is that was really Han Solo's biggest Star Wars role.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird, you know, because Han Solo was always a major character, and you did follow somewhat of a story arc, but his story really took precedence, I thought, in that movie. Like, you could really, you know, feel like, oh, yeah, this guy has been on this journey for, you know, well, 5 films or 4 films now. And so you really get a sense of that. The other trailer moment I thought was great was when, of course, they showed Darth Vader's burned up helmet and Kylo's all, I'm going to finish what you started. And, you know, it kind of gave you that sense of here's this guy who is related to him, who basically is living in his shadow and trying to make a name for himself. And that's, you know, getting back to the things that I thought The Force Awakens did, where it would take some concepts and kind of spin them around, is that now you got a dark side guy tempted by the light. Never seen that before.
Yeah, I think the second trailer, I would say the Chewie We're Home will probably be my first, just because it gave you all the feels of
I mean, I get
the nostalgia. But I think, honestly, the first Rise of Skywalker trailer was awesome. Just because, you know, the imagery, the narration at the beginning, and Rey's is like in this desert, you know, she's standing there, she grabs the lightsaber, there's no one there, and then all of a sudden you see this TIE fighter screaming towards her, and you're kind of like, well, what the heck is this? And then, you know, then she's like, ignites it, turns, runs away from it, and you're like, okay, and you're waiting for like, okay, what's about to happen? And she does the flip, and you're like, oh, okay, she's ready. And then, you know, you kind of start to see all the different things. And of course, at the very end of it, you know, when you hear Luke said, no one's really gone. And then you're thinking like, oh, Luke's coming back. And then you hear Palpatine's cackle and you're like, whoa. So to me, that kind of was just like,
yeah. And, you know, sometimes it's funny because I forget sometimes about, you know, we're always with Star Wars on to the next thing. I guess maybe that's it, where it's true. When you first see that and you're like, well, Palpatine really is back, you know, and then you get the infamous roll it again, you know, at the celebration that we weren't invited to. You know, basically, there is a really good moment there because that was one of those like fanboy dreams. Like, oh, man, you know, because that was one of the criticisms, actually, of Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, was everybody's like, well, you know, Snoke's cool, but, man, I really miss Palpatine. And now we're getting him back. Yeah. And now it looks like we're getting him back. You know, it's in a major way. This final trailer, again, we'll talk about it later, but in the final trailer, it actually looks like we're getting a physical Palpatine back. He's not a Force ghost or Sith spirit or whatever they are. You know, so, I mean, we're really getting what I think we wanted. Now, it remains to be seen if it's going to be the way we want. But again, this is best trailer, so I can say that Chewie We're Home, first Rise of Skywalker trailer. You know, probably one of the best. Yeah. But don't discount the teaser trailer for Force Awakens, though, because it really, if you really put yourself back in that time period when we knew nothing. Because remember, we were sitting there thinking to ourselves, like, man, you know, with the prequels, we didn't really know, but we kind of had a sense because you know where it ends up. But with this, you have no idea.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, I was wondering what Star Wars would look like now, though, because it's like there's been so much of a jump from, you know, Revenge of the Sith was 05.
Well, I mean, and you're going for the technology of filmmaking and all that.
Yeah, the technology of filmmaking. And then, of course, with him trying to bring, because we already kind of knew at that time that he was going back to the whole, like the way the original trilogy was done. So that was another thing that we kind of was like, okay, well, what is this going to look like? Because now you have technology that can match that even more.
Well, but here's the thing. There's that aspect of it, but I'm also talking about the in-universe element of it. Like, what does what does Star Wars 30 years after Return of the Jedi even look like? What's going on in the universe? What what technology is around? What know, and that trailer actually whet your appetite for even more, because it's like, oh man, look at those cool new stormtroopers.
I was just about to say, like, that was actually the shot that really got me, was that flicker with the lights, and you saw the new helmets, and you're like, whoa, like these dudes look,
the kind of updated TIE fighters and all this stuff. You're like, ooh, this is kind of cool, So I mean, it gave you what I thought was a perfect window into this new version of this universe, both filmmaking and in the universe, but without giving away too much. And that was a really difficult thing for them to do.
True.
And so they pulled it off. But what about you guys? What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. All right.
Well, I believe the time has come.
Yep. Basically,
we're from a certain point of view.
And of course, you know what that means. It's time for our trailer review.
Finally.
Final trailer, finally. I mean, we have been posting this thing like crazy on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We even talked about it. It was funny because I can address this now. When we did last week's episode, as we mentioned, we're like, look, guys, we know the trailer is going to drop tonight. And even though we were recording it, a few days before, like we always do with this show, we were really at a struggle because we were kind of like, man, do we change the topic? I mean, it's sort of like there's only about 12 hours between the time this episode is going to premiere to when the trailer drops and it's going to render it. But I thought, no, you know what? It might be fun, for speculation purposes. But we even told you guys on last week's show that this week we're going to review this new trailer. So,
yes.
What'd you think of the new trailer?
Well, I didn't see it yet. No, I'm just joking. So
exactly. Let us know, because we don't know.
No, ironically, so here's my little background story to the trailer. Leading up to it, so of course, I'm like prepared myself. I'm ready to like watch this trailer because I know it's showing at halftime, doing Monday Night Football. I didn't even care about the game because it was the Jets versus the Patriots. We all knew how that was going to end anyway. So I was just like, yeah. Let's just get to the trailer. My cable goes out.
No way.
Yeah, like the cable in the house just went out. So I'm like, are you serious? So now I'm like on my phone, like trying to, because it's the only thing that has, because the internet went out too. So I couldn't even use, my laptop or anything. So I just had to use my phone and wait until, it goes up. So I'm just sitting here trying to watch and wait and wait and wait. So it finally happens. I'm like, oh, thank God. So my first thoughts on it was, okay, it was very visually stimulating as expected by J.J. Abrams. I mean, the guy, he just has an eye for stuff, man, that amazes me. And granted, there was, even leading up to the trailer, there were some shots that people kind of already revealed, like the whole Millennium Falcon and the whole horde of, I guess, the cavalry kind of finally answered the call. And then, of course, you saw the whole ice planet, I guess, whatever that was, with all like the hordes of TIE fighters like screaming towards it. So I thought that was just really visually stimulating. And then I'm like, all right. So when we finally see it, you got Rey running around. She's jumping across stuff. And, you're like, okay, cool. And, before we actually break it all the way down, my actual impression of it was, it was good, but I thought it could have been better. Honestly, I felt like some of the things could have been swapped out from the scissor reel to the trailer, and then from the trailer to the scissor reel. Like, I think there were some shots that could have really added some punch to the final. If this is going to be the final trailer, I feel like they missed the mark a little bit with this, which of course I can understand why it has some fans a tad bit leery, because they're like, okay, well, if they screwed up the trailer, like,
yeah, right.
What are they going to do with the movie? But I mean, like I said, I think everybody, and I agree with most people, it's a good trailer. I like the different, pacing that they had with it at the very beginning. And then there's like that emotional moment, and then it kind of ramps up again. So I kind of like where they were going with that, because it is definitely going to get, it definitely kind of told me that this movie's going to have all those beats in it. So I like that aspect of it, but it was a good trailer. It wasn't the best. I actually liked the first trailer more.
Yeah, I mean, I would overall agree with you. Now let me go through my whole experience. So the problem I had was the debuted on Monday night, of course. Mm-hmm. And I was on this all day, all night setup, pretty much for an event that, you know, I had to do on Tuesday. And, you know, I was sitting there thinking, like, man, I'm not going to be able to see the trailer. Maybe I could do it when I get home. Then I kind of forgot about it because, you know, the setup actually went a few hours past what it was supposed to. So thank goodness, you know, you were kind enough to send me a link to it so I didn't have to, you know, actually go through it. But then I watched it and I'm kind of like, okay, you know, yeah, it was cool. Bunch of cool stuff in it. But I was so tired, you know, so I had to wait until I was a little bit more awake. And, you know, this past week was really brutal as far as work goes. It was like these 12, 15-hour days. So I actually was watching it like last night and a little bit today in order to really get a good sense of it. And then also figure out what I wanted to point out and talk about and stuff like that. And I totally agree with you. Good trailer, good Star Wars trailer, not so good for the final film in the entire saga.
Right.
Because that's, let's face it, this is what you're trying to do. You're trying to get people to see this movie. We still don't know what the story is about. That's my biggest problem. If we're talking about what's good about it, what's bad about it. So what's bad is, still really don't know what the story is. There's not a lot of dialogue. It's all voiceover.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to see, I want to see some character interaction. You know, one of the things that some people online have been bringing up, particularly on various YouTube channels, is the fact that if you go back and look at the Revenge of the Sith trailer, it's all dialogue. And you know, okay, I'm going to see this movie about essentially the seduction of Anakin by this Sith Lord. You know, he's like, Anakin's struggling, you know, he's still like a good guy and he wants to do what's right, but you know, this other guy's telling him all the people that he likes are evil, and you know, it's kind of this slow back and forth kind of a thing. And there's a ton of dialogue in that trailer. Yeah.
And I think with this is kind of like the only dialogue that was really poignant was 3PO.
Yeah.
Like that's the one that, but see, I think they did that for a reason, you know.
Oh, I would, yeah.
Because that whole passage that he said, it was just kind of cryptic and eerie. And it's weird coming from 3PO.
Well, the idea behind it is that, so there's this dagger that Rey is holding that a lot of fans believe might be the Mortis dagger.
Right.
You know, so the latest fan theories are that she ends up getting a hold of the artifact somehow, but there's all this Sith crap on it that they have to try to decipher, so they got to reprogram 3PO to read it, hence the red eye thing. And somehow, you know, you got to wipe his whole memory in doing it. So it's kind of like the context is he wants to take a last look at
before he forgets everybody.
Yeah, before he forgets everybody.
Right.
Which is hilarious to me because this droid is like literally getting his mind wiped after every trilogy. You know,
you got to defrag the droid, man.
I mean, it's kind of like, you know, first he gets it wiped after Revenge of the Sith. He's constantly, you know, getting threatened to get it wiped. I mean, R2's the only one who really never had his memory wiped.
Right.
You know, so there is that. But, yeah, you're right. And I think actually that's the only line of true dialogue that isn't voiceover.
Well, except for like, I guess the Rey Kylo thing was voiced over.
Yeah, it was voiceover.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, it's kind of like the whole thing. There wasn't really anything in the trailer that really gave you a sense of where these characters are, their interaction with each other. Once again, you just got a lot of pretty images.
Well, I mean, I think we got a lot of images with Kylo and Rey. I mean, that was really the focus of it for the most part.
But a lot of it was igniting lightsabers.
Yeah, but I mean, like the whole thing of them smashing what's alleged to be Vader's helmet, and then, of course, them dueling on that, broken part of the Death Star. And then, of course, your leaked images weren't, a part of the trailer for obvious reasons. But,
which surprises me because, I mean, we got Dark Rey, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of like that. You would think that would be something. And that's another thing. It's kind of like this trailer didn't have anything. You give us this thing on the sizzle reel, and it's like, well, there's like zero imagery that explains that further.
Well, yeah, man, I think they're saving that once again for them. I think they're just trying to. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's the shot that honestly, like, I felt should have been in this trailer.
Absolutely. I'm really curious on the international trailers now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I think that's one of the things that, when you're looking at this trailer, now that whole thing with them smashing the whole Vader helmet, I think that is a dagger in her hand, her opposite hand. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole lot of things like what's a vision and what's truth,
Yeah, that's true.
That's the other part of it. And that's.
Well, I mean, from what it looks like to me, I think that actually is. It almost looks like the way that they put it in the trailer, it's almost like they're working together trying to smash this thing. But I honestly think that they're in a duel, and maybe she swings or something like that, or they both go to swing or whatever and smash it. Mm-hmm. I don't actually think that that's them together trying to smash that. Yeah, exactly. I think that's just a casualty of the duel.
Now, does it mean did that place look like Bespin?
It kind of did. It sort of reminded me of that one room that they were in when Leia was kind of in her. When
they were like running around and they were trying to leave.
Well, either that or just where she was like waiting.
Oh, for
Lando to come in to get them for what ended up to be a very unfortunate dinner.
The Last Supper.
Yeah,
at least for Han.
for a while anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, like even going into the beginning of the trailer, the scene where she's running. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of speculation, too, where that whole ocean planet, mm-hmm. I forgot what it's called now. They actually did release the name of it or whatever. But it looks like there's some implications that that's the ocean moon of Endor.
Right.
And then, of course, you have the forest moon of Endor. So that first scene in the trailer looks like it's Rey training on the forest moon of Endor. Now, some people have even said that it's Leia, that it's like a flashback thing. But I think it's Rey.
Yeah, I think it's Rey as well.
Then they cut to her jumping.
Yeah.
Onto what looks like
a Star Destroyer from Jakku.
That's exactly. It kind of looks like that Star Destroyer that she
in Force Awakens.
Was in, right. So I mean, it could be where they're looking for some artifact, because there's also that shot of her and Poe and Finn and all them in the Falcon, and there's that really weird, mysterious little trinket on the, I guess you could call it the dashboard, yeah. That could be an artifact. It could be, something. I mean, there's like a lot of things in that trailer that are just ripe for speculation. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I thought that Palpatine's voiceover was really compelling.
Yeah, and I think that kind of, gave it away. And I mean, a lot of people have different things where Palpatine's like, your coming together would be your undoing. And, of course, I'm instantly thinking about Kylo and Rey.
Absolutely.
And I think that has to be what he's talking about. But some people feel like, it's the rebellion he's talking to.
No, I don't.
I'm like, no, it's got to be those two, because he wouldn't be worried about anybody else except those two.
No, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, that definitely to me screams Kylo and Rey. Mm-hmm. I mean, what it looks like from the trailers is going to happen is that, and who knows, this is why I'm always really curious on where Dark Rey fits into all this, because is the Dark Rey like a clone of Rey, and then they have to, or is that her, could be a vision?
Yeah, I think it could be like one of those whole your failure at the cave type situations. Kind of like what she had in Last Jedi when she went down into that little
Yeah, because there's nothing in this new trailer that even hints toward her being dark.
No, but I think it's either a vision of what happens if she does go dark, or what she might be fighting against. Or it could be, like I said, it could be like a mind game type thing that they're just screwing with Rey on.
Could be. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, there's so many things, the Star Destroyer breaking out of the ice.
Yeah. And that's my thing, is just kind of like, like I said, the whole imagery of it all, like the visuals of it is breathtaking to me. Even that whole throne, it kind of looks like Thanos' old throne.
Well, what's interesting about that is it's actually concept art from Ralph McQuarrie. That was supposed to be the throne room in Return of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. That was the original thing.
Gotcha.
And I thought that was really cool that they actually brought that back and put that there. But yeah, exactly. It kind of looks like some like Lord of the Rings type thing or something like that, I mean, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see, because obviously Palpatine has had this entire force probably in the unknown regions, but it's kind of like, where did he get a lot of these guys? I mean, is it kind of like, I'm going to be a Sith trooper. Okay, cool. Now just chill here for 30 years.
We haven't seen one of those. We still haven't seen the Knights of Ren in this yet.
No, and there's so many theories going around, and there's so many different things, like, that he's going to be fighting them. And I mean, it's just, of course we see that in that was the first trailer, I think. Yeah. So, I mean, when does that happen? And that's the problem that I have with the trailers. Like, we know a lot of things that are probably going to happen, but we just don't know how it all ties together.
I mean, partially, what I think is going to happen is, I'm going to just do my own speculation, but I think it's artifacts that Kylo and Rey are both looking for.
Yep.
I think Kylo's trying to bring back the Emperor, or trying to find out a way to bring back the Emperor. And Rey, of course, inevitably is trying to stop him. So they're both going for the same stuff. It kind of ends up being like this wild scavenger hunt. But in the process of it, of course, they're running into these obstacles, and they're running into each other trying to acquire this stuff. And then eventually, but I think it's all part of Palpatine's plan. Like, I think Palpatine just wants to see, out of the two of them, like, who's going to really advance.
Well, that's why I'm really curious to see if the whole granddaughter thing ends up panning out.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, the idea is, and, you could get a little bit of it. I do think that they're both looking for some sort of artifact or something like that. I don't necessarily think that Kylo is trying to bring the Emperor back. I think he's going to stumble into him. I think it's really more like Palpatine's been in the shadows, and he's ready for the Empire to come back, basically. And, here's Kylo with the First Order. He's a supreme leader. I think he's trying to be more powerful. I think he's just going after Sith artifacts or whatever it is to learn so he could be as powerful as these guys. And then maybe somehow they stumble onto the Palpatine, and it's like, oh, great, now we got to
deal with this guy.
We got to deal with this guy. And I think somewhere along the way, Kylo's probably going to... It's going to be interesting if the whole redemption thing is true, then how that's going to come to play.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to see something from Palpatine, like, and Rey's probably going to make them see, like, look,
this is your future.
Yeah, this is your future. Like, no one ends well after this. Like, you see what happened to Vader, you see what happened to Palpatine. It's like, is this how you really want? Like, when you could really be over here and create a complete new legacy. Luke's gone. You have the space to do it now. Like, he's no longer around. You're the last of the last, really. I mean, from that era, from his
that makes
genealogy.
sense.
So it's like you could really rise and be the next Skywalker, basically.
I mean, there's just so many things, because I don't know if you noticed or not, but in the background of C-3PO giving his whole little only dialogue in the film.
Yeah.
It's at least in the trailer.
Speech.
You actually see a battle droid. Like one of the Roger ones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, there's like in the whole scene where you see the Falcon and all that, there's a Falcon. It looks like the Ghost.
The Ghost, yeah.
Man, there was like one of those like gunships from Attack of the Clones. There was... So you really got to wonder how all this stuff's going to factor in.
Well, I mean, and this is the other thing, too, and I'm glad you kind of started to bring this up because I think we're going to get like one of the most epic space battles of all time.
I think we're going to get epic space battles, epic ground battles.
Yeah, because I mean...
Epic everything.
Because that whole, like, when you saw those Star Destroyers, those Imperial Star Destroyers, and then, of course, then you see all of, the Resistance and their friends, I guess. Well, I guess they all can be considered Resistance at this point. And then, of course, you saw, like, the Space Horses running across that whole terrain.
Yeah, they got a name, too. And
the Unbox or...
Unbox, that's it.
Yeah. I think that's... so we're going to see, like, this epic war. I feel like it's going to give us a bit of, like, Rogue One and...
That's what it seems like.
Revenge of the Sith almost at the same time, and that's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. What was your favorite trailer moment or scene?
Ooh. I don't know, man. That's a hard one. I probably would go with the smashing of whatever that artifact was.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I'm kind of partial to that picture that we actually had up during the Cantina, where it's like you saw the side hooded Palpatine, thing. And then Rey standing there or whatever,
looking up at him. Who the heck?
Yeah. I
mean, that was creepy. I mean, I will say that was kind of like it was like Palpatine's like a transformer or something.
Yeah,
man.
Exactly. It's like it's going to be really interesting to see how all that plays out. And like I said, I'm really looking forward to the international trailer too.
Definitely.
Because that, they always give away so much, and they kind of have to because, for the international community, a lot of people, that's almost like they have to market it differently. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be really interesting to see exactly what they put in that. Because the other thing I'm wondering too is there's that thing where, was it Poe and Finn? Where it's almost like they're watching something because there's like some projection from behind them, like this green light that almost looks like it's projecting something.
Oh.
And it's funny.
I will say the other cool thing, though, I did love was that, how could I forget? But the whole, like, war room scene with Lando.
Oh, yeah.
That was cool. Just to see Lando at the table, kind of like being the guy, and Poe's like across from him, like, yo, like. And
who knows, maybe this scene happens somewhere similar, but somebody actually, I can't believe somebody did this, but they zoomed in into Poe's eye or Finn's eye or somebody's eye to see the reflection of what they were looking at. And it
looked the SI of them.
I know, and it looked like a lightsaber battle. So it could be that they were reviewing some old lightsaber battle. It was sort of like some historical thing.
You say it was Poe and who?
I think it was Poe and Finn.
I have a theory about that now, but I'll probably save it for the next podcast.
Now the other theory, though. So what do you think of the whole theory? There's another theory out there that says that, how the whole Finn might be Force sensitive kind of thing? Yeah,
I mean, and, there's always speculation where they're talking about how everybody has the Force. It's just that certain people are naturally gifted at tapping into it, but everybody has it and everybody can. It's just that, excuse me, everybody just doesn't really know how, or some people just kind of stumble across it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, football, right?
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can learn how to play football, but that doesn't mean you're going to be a gifted football player.
Yeah, everybody's not like, Jerry Rice or Joe Montana or something like that.
Exactly.
But, I think that it could be that Rey is actually going to show Finn how to tap into it. Mm-hmm. That he's had it all this time. And he just, really didn't know it.
Well, because, he says the Force brought us together and all this stuff. Now, for me, it's just kind of like, I think it's just,
yeah, because that's him narrating at the very beginning.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not, I don't think it means what a lot of people think it means. I mean, it's kind of like, he knows about the Force and, I mean, hey, there was that Jyn Erso's mom. Mm-hmm. She was all like, oh, the Force is that. I mean, she wasn't a Jedi or anything like that. Mm-hmm. She just knows about the Force and knows what the Force can do. Mm-hmm. And I think that's all that was happening in that. That's the only reason why I think Finn was saying that. I don't think it's some clue that, he's some Force-sensitive guy. I mean, yeah, granted, it wouldn't bother me if we learned that he was. Mm-hmm. So where he's thinking back like, oh, maybe that's why I could shoot so well, or
right,
because that's usually what happens when all these people learn the Force. Is like they kind of go back and thinking and go, oh, yeah, well, maybe that's why I was able to pilot out of this or that.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too, I often wonder, with the whole Force thing, is that they even kind of brought it up with even kind of to your point with Leia. When she was able to do certain things, she started thinking about like, oh yeah, I was able to jump pretty high on that.
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
How was I able to do that?
Right.
And I think that's kind of the thing. Even with Broom Kid, I think that a lot of times you just kind of just have it. You just don't know how to really tap into it. And I think that's something that, we're going to kind of start to explore, because I think there's a lot of things with the Force that. And that's why I hope, like, if they start making subsequent movies after this, not, of course, a saga trilogy, but just exploring the Force.
Explore the Force, kind of like what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the whole Mysteries of the Force thing.
Yeah.
And exploring that more. Because it's true. They should really try to do that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, what about you guys? What did you think of the trailer? Did you like it? Did you think that it was good for a final Star Wars trailer, or did you maybe see some of the issues that we saw? Let us know in the comments. I
got one more thing to say.
One more thing?
Yeah. What did you think about the whole Rey and Kylo thing when she said, well, no one knows, how did Rey put it? Like,
oh, yeah. No one
knows me.
And then everybody thinks they know me, but no one does.
And then he's like, I do.
Yeah, because, well.
I mean, I know the whole meld thing. They were probably.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not just that, though. Because once again, it's from a certain point of view, right? I mean, I think, honestly, it's almost kind of the same deal that Luke and some other people suffered. She's now this big hero. Everybody now has heard what she's done for, the Resistance and all this other stuff. And, now obviously they're back and she's probably somewhat revered and all that stuff. And everybody probably thinks they know her. And she's like, you know what? Everybody thinks they know me, but nobody really does. But at first, I thought it might have been kind of an illusion. Like, y'all think that I'm this really good guy, but look, I'm really dark Rey behind the scenes.
Or, I mean, I'm just wondering, like, their relationship, because we still don't know. I mean, granted, we know Snoke did the whole, mind connection type of thing, but I mean, like, we feel like it's always something deeper between them. I don't think they are.
I just think they had this bond. I think that Force melding of their minds or whatever gave them a bond. I think that was actually an unintentional consequence from that. I don't think Snoke actually was thinking that it would have that effect.
Well, I mean, even when he tried to read her mind initially, like, because remember, like in Force Awakens, when he was trying to probe her for the information about, where Skywalker was or the map. And, of course, she reversed it on him, and he was just kind of, like, freaked out by it.
Yeah, Kylo did not take kindly to...
Yeah, getting his mind read.
Because he instantly cut everything off. And
exactly. So, but then, of course, subsequently, okay, now Snoke connected, and when he went to Snoke, and Snoke basically told him, like, well, how was she able to resist you? He was like, I don't know. He was like, he was.
Well, I'm asking you. Right? You're supposed to be the one teaching me, buddy.
Yeah, you're the one in the big chair.
Yeah, it's like, right, exactly.
So, so I think from that point on, you kind of have to wonder, like, because everyone else Kylo did that to weren't Force sensitive.
Well, and then again, this could play into the whole Palpatine's granddaughter thing. It's kind of like, I mean, granted, I know that the whole idea that, your power in the Force doesn't necessarily isn't necessarily dictated by who you're related to.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that's why I really like the whole theory of if she's not a direct clone, that maybe he had something to do
with her creation.
It would make sense. And then it would also make sense why she's so powerful.
All right.
We'll just have to see.
All
right. But now, it's actually time for probably one of my favorite segments. And it's one we like to call Clear Your Mind. That's right. This is where we answer your questions right here. So if you do have a question, now that we've got this great YouTube show going, just go ahead and leave your question in the comments section. Or you can also hit us up at Head to Head SW on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Leave your question there or any kind of a comment. We love to answer these things. And what's our first one?
All right. Our first question comes from Jermaine Lincoln. His question is, what do you think will be done that will convince Kylo to turn back?
Honestly, as we even alluded to this a little bit during our trailer discussion, I think it's going to be... I think part of it's going to be because he has that connection to Rey, that he's going to end up saving her. Maybe it's from Palpatine. Maybe I don't think he's going to succeed because, you know, the rumors are basically that Rey is going to be the one to kill Palpatine, which that's not going to sit well with me. I would actually rather it be Rey and Kylo together, because it's kind of like, look, this guy's like the most powerful Sith Lord ever. If she's able to beat him by herself, I'm going to be a little upset.
Unless she's his granddaughter.
Even then. I mean, the rumors, again, it depends on how much you guys pay attention to rumors. The rumors are that the Force ghost of Luke and Leia and, you know, whoever else is hanging out.
Cadre of fallen Jedi.
Pretty much the Cantina and the Great Beyond, right? Are going to, like, empower her or something stupid like that. But whatever the case may be, I honestly think that what's going to happen with Kylo is that his redemption is going to be tied to her reaching him because they have that connection with the Force. And there's going to be something that probably happens within the film that sort of weakens Kylo's resolve a little bit toward the dark side. Maybe, who knows? And all this stuff searching for things, he'll start to come to the same conclusions that, you know, maybe Vader did in the end. Like, you know what, man, this isn't paying off. And so, you know, and then maybe Rey's in trouble, and then he has to make the decision. Do I save her? Do I not? Because if you remember, we got even a little bit of it in The Last Jedi. I mean, he was going to fire on the ship, but it's like, my mom's on the ship, I better not, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like at the last minute, he broke off the attack, and then somebody else came in and fired on it.
Yeah.
But he couldn't do it.
Right.
So you could still see there's a little bit of conflict in there.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's why he's so over the top on Luke, because it's kind of like, you know, I want to be an evil bad guy. I want to be a Sith Lord, you know? And it's,
I think he has all these people that kind of stands in his way that kind of, you know, were supposed to be there for him. And I think he kind of resented Han in a way. And I think he resented Luke, of course, when Luke explained kind of what happened. It was like, I don't want to say he misinterpreted Luke's thing, but it's just like he caught him at the wrong moment and didn't give Luke a chance to explain. I don't think it would have changed much.
On the other hand, though, you know, I mean, when somebody's like swinging on you with a lightsaber when you're sleeping, you know, explanations might not necessarily be the thing that you want in that moment.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's just like, you know, and I'm sure probably at that time Snoke was probably in his ear, like, you know, Skywalker is jealous of you. He sees your power. He doesn't want to let you. And so then when he sees him do that, it confirms it for him. He was like,
right.
So then that's what made him like, you know what?
Well, and that's a good point. You almost have to go to what turned him in the first place in order to figure out what's going to ultimately redeem him. And that's it. It was betrayal.
Yeah.
He felt betrayed by his dad because his dad wasn't there for him. He felt betrayed by Luke because Luke tried to kill him. And Snoke, the big bad, I mean, we don't know that he's a Sith Lord, but he's kind of a Sith Lord stand-in anyway. He definitely has Force powers, so it's kind of like he was the one that took him in, you know.
Spent time with him
and everything else. And then he has this whole romantic notion about Vader.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe something happens that reverses all that.
Yeah. And so he's just looking like, okay, well, if I'm not good enough for Luke, might as well be the best bad guy, you know what I'm saying? Like my grandfather was, and I can just, follow in his footsteps because he's not here to, disappoint me, because I'm just it.
And who knows, maybe... Yeah, it just depends on how this whole thing with Palpatine plays out, not to mention what Hux is doing in the background. Because remember...
I can't wait to see him. Cause
we didn't see him in the final trailer.
No, I don't think
we have no idea what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was just trying to really focus on who we need to see at that time. But I know Hux much like Poe is kind of like another one of my favorite side characters.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Hux is absolutely hilarious.
It's hilarious. All right. What do we got next?
All right. The next question is submitted by Crystal Tyler. She asked, do you think Palpatine will be as strong as he was in Return of the Jedi? It's kind of the question I asked a little bit earlier. Yeah,
I mean, again, it's like it really depends on what his whole state is, because it's kind of like you were saying, he's older, he's all that. It could go either way.
Mm-hmm. The dark side weakens you anyway. As far as life expectancy.
But it depends on, maybe he's found some sort of a thing that empowers him.
Yeah.
What circumstances did he come back? Because, we see that he's a physical manifestation.
Right.
Well, how did that happen? And there were stories that, when he fell down the shaft or whatever, the Royal Guards actually saved him.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, maybe he kind of pulled the Yoda. Like, remember Yoda at the end of Revenge of the Sith? He dropped down. He could have gone back up and fought, but he was like, get me out of here.
Right.
And he went to Dagobah and sort of like regrouped. And, in a way, I think that this is Palpatine's Yoda moment.
Yeah.
It's kind of like he went into an exile.
You know what? I never thought about it, but that makes perfect sense. Wow.
You're welcome.
That just changes the whole game for me now. Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if you think about it, it's an exact correlation. So he basically went into an exile, bided his time, and now he's coming out swinging.
And he waited for, a person to get strong enough, like Luke.
Like Luke.
Just so in this case, it's Kylo or Rey or both.
Right. Now time will tell, it's like Rey comes to him, no, you're too old to begin the training. But it's just one of those things where it's like I started thinking about it going, that would make sense.
Yeah.
And in that case, I would say that, yes, he's probably as powerful in the Force.
Mm-hmm.
Physically, I'm sure, being that he's, 30 years older and he fell down a shaft.
Mm-hmm.
But, we'll have to see. It's going to be fun either way.
You gotta wonder if they're going to flash back to what he did.
I keep thinking of that whole robot chicken thing.
I was thinking about
as he was falling down, going, "Where did I go wrong in my life?"
That life.
And old Bob O'Reilly starts playing, and
well, I'm also thinking about like one of those Family Guy things. It's kind of that time when I fell down that shaft, and then it's
yeah.
I remember the time when I fell down. It's like, well, here's what really happened. And then it's like, as I was falling, I reached out and,
Oh, man, Blue Harvest is still one of the funniest.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
Did they ever... Oh, they did do the Return of the Jedi one. I forgot.
Yeah, something Dark Side.
I thought that was the second one. Something Dark Side, I think, was the Empire Strikes Back one.
Really?
But I forgot what the third one was called.
Okay.
If you guys know, leave it in the comments section. All right, but remember... For Clear Your Mind, if you guys have any questions at all, submit them in the comments section or hit us up at HeadToHeadSW, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can ask your questions there. I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up for our show today.
Yes, sir, my friend.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed our trailer review. Remember, leave in the comments section what you guys thought of the Rise of the Skywalker trailer. And we'll end up seeing you guys next week, where we're going to talk about all things Star Wars. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.